Hello everybody, we are back here on The Hunter Call of the Wild, and today we're gonna kind of go over all of the recent hints and information about the new reserve that has come out. I know I'm a little bit late on this, but I figured to kind of make up for how late I was, we would talk about what I kind of want out of the map, what species I think there will be on it, what potential new gun could come with it, things like that. There's quite a bit that I want to go over, and I'm going to try and include footage of all of the animals that are currently in Classic or Call of the Wild that I'm really hoping will be on the new map. I won't be including any photos or anything like that just to avoid potential copyrights and things like that, but for everything that we do have video footage of, I will try to put up at the appropriate times. But anyway, to start things off, if you guys do not already know this, there's been a ton of hints come out about the new reserve, and it's really looking like it's possibly going to be New Zealand, and in fact there's a really high chance that it will be New Zealand. Based off all the clues, everything is pointing in that direction, so if it does end up being New Zealand, I think there's quite a few things they could do with it that would be really awesome, and one of them is the new gun. I feel like the new gun, it would only be appropriate for them to add the 308 in, because that is something that just recently got a huge buff in the Hunter Classic, and it's a highly requested caliber, so for them to not put in the 308 just would not make sense in my opinion. The only other thing I could really see being added is possibly an AR chambered in 223 for a species that I actually think might be there, which we will talk about in a little bit, but I think those are really the only two options that they have. Sure, there's plenty of other calibers out there, and there's quite a few of them that would be good for this type of reserve, but I really feel like with the amount of requests for it, the 308 would be a perfect fit for this map. So as far as species go, there's actually quite a few species that I would be extremely excited to see in the game, and I think there's a pretty high chance we'll get at least a few of them. And that was a pretty bad shot, but alright, well, we hit it on that other shot right there, but did not really get it vitally, unfortunately, so too bad, but I mean, it was just a 4. Anyway, though, there's quite a few species that I think would be really good on this map, and a lot of them are deer species, so could this possibly be a deer-heavy reserve? I think it's very, very likely that it will be. Obviously, there's some other things they could do with it, but I'm really hoping they'll take the deer direction, because there's so many deer species in New Zealand that would fit a map really well and would go perfectly in the game because they're in the Hunter Classic or they're highly requested, and the first of those is the Sika deer. This is something that they actually have never put in the Hunter Classic or Call of the Wild, but it's a really awesome deer species that ever since I played the old Cabela's games that had them in it, I've always wanted them in the Hunter game, and this will be the perfect opportunity for them to do that. So if they manage to do the Sika deer, that would be absolutely amazing, and it would probably be my favorite species on the map. Now, I don't have anything that I can put up to show you guys what a Sika deer looks like, because as I said at the beginning, I'm trying to avoid copyrights and things like that, so I won't be doing any Google images or anything like that, but the Sika deer is very similar to a sambar or a rusa deer, or it could even be seen as, I guess, a small elk maybe, but it's a very cool deer species. I'm really hoping it'll be in the game. And that brings us to our next one, which is, as I was saying, very similar, and that is the sandbar deer, which we actually have these in the Hunter Classic, so I will probably put some footage of one of them up right about now, so that you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. Hopefully I'll have time to record all of the footage of them, but the sandbar deer would be a really cool option to put in, and it's actually very similar to the next deer that we're going to talk about, which is the rusa deer. It's another very similar deer to the sandbar deer. I don't really know too much about them. All I know is they are very awesome looking deer, and they're very similar looking, so I would imagine they're probably related. Don't quote me on that because I don't know for sure, but it's another really cool deer species that I think would go really well on a New Zealand map, and we actually finally got some European rabbits out here, so we'll probably try to take out a few of these little guys as we're chatting, but back to what I was talking about. Yeah, the rusa deer, sambar deer would be really, really nice to have, but this next deer species that I think it's a pretty high chance we'll see it, is something that people have been wanting on a different map for a very long time, and that is the fallow deer. Currently we only have it here on Hirschfelden, and it's a very popular deer species among a lot of people in the game, including myself. I just really wish it was on another map, and this is going to be the opportunity for them to do that. So hopefully they do end up putting them on this new map. It would make sense considering fallow deer are a pretty popular game species in New Zealand, and as you guys know, the fallow deer look absolutely awesome. The true racks for them are fantastic. So this would honestly make it a lot more fun to grind for a diamond fallow deer, because currently Hirschfelden isn't exactly the easiest map to hunt. There's a lot of brush and not too many drinking zones where things aren't brushy, so it leads to a lot of frustrating hunting when you're trying to grind for a diamond, and hopefully having them on a New Zealand map would make it a lot easier to come across them. Alright, so the next species we're going to talk about is, well, it's a no-brainer for any New Zealand map, and that is the red deer. You really can't make a New Zealand map without having the red deer on it. It's such a popular game species over there, and we've already got it in quite a few maps, so I know there's quite a few people that don't really want red deer to be on any more maps, but you can't make a New Zealand map and not add red deer, and I think there's some cool things they could do with them. In fact, I believe it was Zaggy that was actually talking about this, and I think it's a great idea. Maybe separating the racks between different maps, because obviously in real life New Zealand stags look completely different from red deer from other parts of the world. So if they were to separate them based on map, it would give us a reason to go to every map for red deer, and it would really solve the issue of people not really wanting to have red deer on multiple maps, because you'd actually have a reason to hunt them on different maps if they had different racks based off of the map you were playing on. So I think that is a fantastic idea, and I kinda hope they do something like that. You guys didn't see that, but yeah, minus the terrible aim. Let's get back to what we were talking about. So yeah, red deer, absolute no-brainer. They have to have them. It won't be New Zealand without the red deer. But the next one that we're going to talk about is something that a lot of people don't really know is actually in New Zealand. And that's mainly because it's only in a couple portions of it, and that is the whitetail deer. This could potentially be our second map with whitetail deer on it, if they decide to go that route, because whitetail aren't super common in New Zealand, but there are a few parts of New Zealand that have whitetail. So, if they wanted to, they could make this the second map with whitetail deer, which I know would make a lot of people, including myself, very, very happy. Whitetail have been something that has needed a second map for a long time, and they've just never done it, so hopefully they will soon. Hopefully this will be the map that they do that on. Alright, so the next species on the list is the chamois. I really think there's a high chance we'll get them with this reserve. It would honestly be another no-brainer to add them in. You pretty much have to have chamois on a New Zealand map. Now, I really don't know too much about them, except for the fact that they look awesome, and they're mainly found in the higher elevation areas up in the mountains, so it would be very similar to, I guess, kind of how the ibex are in the Hunter Classic, where they're all up in the higher elevations. I think that's pretty much what chamois would be. They're very cool, though. If you guys have not seen them, you can go ahead and Google them. Unfortunately, like I was saying with one of the other animals, I'm not going to show any pictures just in case of copyright issues and stuff like that. Don't want to have to deal with any of that, so I apologize for not being able to toss up pictures, but as of now, they don't have chamois in Classic, so I can't use footage from that, but I do think they would be an absolutely awesome addition, and they'd be really fun to hunt, I feel. Being able to go up in the mountains for them would be a pretty cool hunting experience. Well, I'm just not on point at all today on these little rabbits, which is pretty unfortunate. We do have a fallow buck somewhere back there, so we'll probably just wait for him to pop out. At least I can hit a fallow deer. The next thing is actually the Himalayan tahr, though, which is another similar species to the chamois, kind of, I guess. It'll be another mountainous species. Once again, don't know a ton about them, but I do think they'd be really cool to have in the game. They definitely fit in with this type of reserve. They'd be an absolutely perfect fit, actually. but I'm not really going to talk too much about them because I don't know a lot about them once again. So the next species that we're going to talk about is actually the feral goat, and this is the one thing that would make me think they might add a semi-automatic 223 of some kind, possibly in an AR format. I think it would be great for feral goats, depending on what class they actually make them, because in the Hunter Classic, the 223 AR is actually really good for feral goats from what I remember, and I think it would be pretty sweet if they were to do that. Now, the feral goats are actually one of the coolest things about the Australian Reserve in the Hunter Classic, because they just have such a huge variety of fur types and horn types that it really makes them interesting to hunt, and I think they'd be great for Call of the Wild. It would be a very awesome species to be able to chase after, and the diamonds would look insane. The diamonds would look absolutely crazy for a feral goat, so we can hope that they do have them in there. It would be a pretty awesome species to hunt, as I was saying. Next up, let's talk about kind of the small game that I think could possibly be on this map, and one of them being the European rabbits. It would make sense since they just added European rabbits in, and you can find them in New Zealand, so that would be an awesome thing. Because, as most of you know, Hirschfelden isn't everybody's favorite map. In fact, a lot of people don't really like Hirschfelden, so to have the European rabbits on a different map would probably be a pretty great decision. I love hunting them here on Hirschfelden, but it would be nice to have some variety and be able to go to another map to hunt them, because I do really enjoy them. I think the European rabbits were a great addition to the game, and their burrowing mechanic is pretty cool. A lot like the Hunter Classic's burrowing mechanic, it is a very nice change of pace compared to the normal hunting. But you guys have already seen a ton of stuff about the European rabbits, so we won't talk about those too much. Next up, though, we are going to talk about some potential bird species, which there's actually quite a few possibilities for a New Zealand map, and this first one is something that is super popular, and I see it get requested a lot, and that is the paradise duck. They're a really cool little duck species, and I think they would go really well with a New Zealand reserve, and it would be pretty likely, I think, that they'd add them. If they don't add any type of small game, then we're definitely getting a bird. And usually they go with some kind of duck species, or on Hirschfelden they go with the Canada goose, but most of the time they put a duck species or a rabbit species on these maps. And in Leighton's case, you get one of each, but I do think paradise duck would be really cool. It would be an awesome thing to put on the map. There's a few other birds, though, that could be possibilities. There's a couple species of quail that might fit into the map pretty well, and if that's the case, that would be our first upland bird, which is another thing that's really highly requested, and that is a lot of upland birds. I know for a fact this next one is something that gets requested constantly, and that is the pheasant. It would be really nice if they'd add pheasant with them, and if they do add pheasant with this reserve, hopefully they'll add it to Hirschfelden and maybe even Leighton Lakes. I think it would make sense. Hirschfelden's known for its pheasant in the Hunter Classic, and that was something it was lacking on release here in Call of the Wild. So we can hope that that'll be an addition, but it's too early to say now. They haven't really given too much information about what exactly is going to be on the reserve. They haven't even said if it really is New Zealand, but with all the hints, it's pointing directly to New Zealand, so I'd say it's a pretty safe bet that it will be. But yeah, I really think pheasant would be good. It would be our first upland bird, and once they add the first upland bird, there will be many other things they can do with it. So the last type of bird species that we're going to talk about, and actually the last animal that I have to talk about, is the Pacific black duck, which is very similar to one of the black ducks in Classic, I believe. I think we have the American black duck in there. I don't know if they're the same thing or not, but that is a good fallow deer. Get that down real quick. Well, not too bad. I'll take that. Anyway, though, I think Pacific black duck would be pretty cool. Not my top pick for a bird species. I do think that paradise duck or pheasant would be better, but I wouldn't complain if they added those in. Now, another thing that I'm really curious about is what are the need zones going to be like, because we know in the SRP they started going away from the long drink times and made it so feed times and resting times are the primary thing you want to hunt, and the drink times are only 30 minutes to 2 hours long, which is way less than most maps. My question is, are they going to do the same thing on the new map, or will it be back to the normal drink zone times? Honestly, I'm kind of hoping they just, in general, remove drink zones, because it makes the game way too easy, in my opinion. I would like it if they'd eventually go to kind of a classic style system where the animals just roam the map and occasionally will stop to eat or drink. I feel like that's a lot more realistic, but I doubt they'll ever do that, so I am very curious to see what the need zones are going to be like on this new map. It definitely is a high possibility that it'll be the same as SRP. Anyway, the last thing that I'm sure a lot of you are probably curious about, because I get this question constantly, is am I excited about the map? And the short answer to that is yes, I'm very excited. It's something I've wanted for a while. There's two maps that I've always wanted in Call of the Wild, one of them being New Zealand, and the other one being an Arizona, New Mexico desert type map. I think both of those would be fantastic additions, but New Zealand is definitely not what I expected as the next reserve. I was 100% thinking it was going to be Australia, but I'm really happy that there's a high chance it's New Zealand, because that's a much more interesting map in my opinion compared to Australia. So I'm very happy they decided to go with New Zealand instead of Australia. So I really hope it does have all these different deer species. Once again, this was just kind of my opinions and thoughts of what I really want for this map. Other than that, I don't really have too much else to add to it. I was kind of hoping we'd find some more rabbits during this video, but all the zones that I've gone to have had nothing, and I'm in a multiplayer session right now that I joined into, so wasn't really sure what there was, but unfortunately, not really anything going on. We did get that nice little level 4 fallow, so that was kind of cool, but was really hoping for something else. One last thing that I do want to kind of touch on a little bit is the fact that they've shown kind of images of helicopters in some of the hints and teasers for this new map, and I'm wondering, somebody actually had a very interesting suggestion in one of my recent streams, and that was maybe the possibility of them actually releasing New Zealand and Australia at the same time and having to use helicopters to travel between the maps. I don't think it's likely that that'll happen, but I mean, it would be really cool if they did something like that. Once again, I don't think so, but it definitely would be cool. In my personal opinion, the helicopter just is another hint towards it being New Zealand. Most likely it's just a hint because of the fact that a lot of places in New Zealand do require a helicopter to get to. Maybe we'll have some kind of helicopter mechanic where in order to get to the high mountains, we have to get on a helicopter and fly up there. Once again, I don't know how possible that'll be for them to do on their graphics engine, but I think it could be cool. And it's definitely something that we don't want to completely rule out, because it's always possible that they will do something like that. Anyway, that's really all I had to talk about here about this new reserve. I'm very excited for whatever it might be, and I really hope it is New Zealand. I really hope that it is. But anyway, before we go, let's go ahead and pick this little roe deer up. By far the best thing we've killed during this video. Little 74 scoring roe deer. Not too bad. That's a good looking roebuck. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think about this new reserve and what you think it might be. There's definitely a ton of possibilities for a New Zealand map, and I'm really excited to see what they do. I hope they do add a lot of deer species, because that would honestly be my dream map, and I'd probably never leave the map. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. I do post 7 videos a week, along with 5 live streams a week, and sometimes even some bonus streams. So if you're enjoying the content, there's plenty more of that to be watched. And if you haven't already, be sure to like the video. Helps push my videos out into YouTube's recommended feed, which is a huge help in growing the channel. We are trying to get to 7,500 subs before the end of the year, so all of that would be greatly appreciated. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace!